Okay, let's think about this. What if your quiet courage could actually change the course of history? What if you were chosen, really chosen, for a pivotal moment, but the only way forward was incredibly risky? Today, we're doing a deep dive into an ancient narrative that feels so relevant right now, the Book of Esther. And it's not just an old story, it's this really powerful, engaging way to explore some profound themes. Think of it as a shortcut almost to understanding faith, identity, courage, how they all weave together. Our mission really is to figure out why this amazing tale from way back then still speaks so strongly to us, here in 2025.
And what makes Esther so unique, the thing that really gets people talking, is it's a striking silence.
Guy Signs, how so?
Well, unlike pretty much every other book in the Hebrew Bible, it doesn't mention God directly. Not once.
Wow, okay, no direct mention.
Exactly. And that absence, it forces us to ask a really deep question. How does sort of divine influence work? How do we see a hidden hand maybe when it's not spelled out, when it's not announced with trumpets?
Right, that's where it gets fascinating, isn't it? Because even without God being named as an actor, this story reads like a thriller.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, it's got everything. Palace intrigue, this high-stakes beauty contest, real nail-biting suspense, and then, ultimately, justice. You can almost picture it, can't you? The tension in those Persian palace halls.
You really can. And to get Esther's story, you need the backdrop. Ancient Persia, King Xerxes on the throne.
Yeah.
The whole thing kicks off with, well, a pretty dramatic event many people know, Queen Vashti's defiance.
Ah, yes, Vashti. She refused the king's summons.
She did, refused to appear before him and his guests, and boom, she was deposed, just like that, which created this unexpected power vacuum, a vacant throne that totally changed the court dynamics, and, well, it set the stage perfectly for Esther.
So enter Esther, a young woman, kind of appears out of nowhere for this royal contest, but she's got this huge secret. She wins, becomes queen, but she's hiding her true identity, that she's Jewish. I mean, can you imagine the pressure keeping that secret in that environment?
It's immense. And that really highlights this theme of identity struggles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
She's navigating this world that wants to define her purely by her beauty or her position, while she's grappling internally with who she really is, her heritage, her people. But what's so interesting is that this hidden identity, this vulnerability, it doesn't just stay hidden. Eventually, it becomes the key, the very lever for saving her people.
So the vulnerability becomes a strength.
Exactly. It shows that sometimes our deepest truths, even the ones we hide, can become incredibly powerful if they're revealed at the right moment, in the right way. And that, I think, resonates with how people today navigate different parts of their identity, in work or family or society.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so the tension ramps up even more with the villain, Haman.
Oh, Haman.
He's this high official, just consumed by hatred for Mordecai, Esther's cousin. But it doesn't stop there, does it?
No, chillingly it doesn't. He convinces the king to issue an edict to annihilate Mordecai's entire people, all the Jews in the empire.
It's so stark, this incredibly dramatic clash of good versus evil playing out on this grand stage.
And that threat, that horrifying decree, brings us right to the heart of the story, the absolute turning point. Esther's people are facing complete destruction, and she's faced with this almost impossible choice. Mordecai challenges her, doesn't he? He sends that message, basically saying, maybe you attained royalty for such a time as this.
Yeah, that line gives me chills every time. Talk about pressure.
Right. And it pushes her. She makes this incredibly courageous decision to approach the king, unsummoned, which was forbidden, and her declaration, if I perish, I perish.
Yeah.
Wow, that's not just giving up. It's this profound act of courage.
Total commitment.
Total commitment. Staring down immense fear, the very real possibility of death, to stand up for what's right. It really makes you think, doesn't it? About dealing with fear when the stakes are impossibly high.
It absolutely does. And it brings us right back to that central question for this deep dive. Okay, God isn't mentioned. So how do we interpret all these dramatic events, these rescues, these timings? Is it all just, a series of really lucky breaks, remarkable coincidences? Or is there something more going on? Providence.
Well, this is where we really dig into that idea of God's silent hand or divine timing. Because when you look closely, the story is full of these seemingly coincidental moments, right? The king can't sleep one night.
Right, the insomnia.
Exactly. So he asked for the royal records to be read. And what do they read? The part about how Mordecai saved his life earlier, something that had been forgotten.
Which Haman walks in right then to ask permission to hang Mordecai. The timing is unbelievable.
Precisely. And Esther's timing in approaching the king, the favor she finds. When you look at it all together through a lens of faith, These don't necessarily seem random. You can see them as these subtly orchestrated moments. God working behind the scenes, maybe, shaping events without the thunder and lightning. Esther kind of challenges our expectations of how faith works. It shows that divine presence isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a whisper, or a sleepless night,
Yeah.
or putting the right person in the right place.
Finding meaning in the quiet, maybe. Or seeing purpose even when things seem silent or confusing.
Exactly. Discerning that higher purpose.
That idea of silence, though, it really hits home because sometimes life does feel silent, doesn't it? Especially when you're facing something big and the way forward isn't clear at all. It makes me wonder, thinking about you listening, have you ever felt that kind of profound silence when you really needed guidance?
And I think that's why Esther still connects so deeply. Her story shows us that there are, well, modern Esthers all around us.
People stepping up.
People stepping up, often quietly, without fanfare, but under real pressure, doing what needs to be done. Esther's still so relatable. A young woman finding her purpose, finding her voice in a world that's trying to box her in or define her. Just like people today navigate their own challenges, discovering their own agency, their own impact, sometimes in ways they never expected.
So thinking about that moment of needing courage, maybe when no one else is watching or when the stakes feel personal and high. What's your own Esther moment? Have you had one? That time you had to step forward, maybe quietly, for something that truly mattered to you. When you boil it all down, the Book of Esther leaves us with this incredibly powerful message, I think. You don't have to be loud to be powerful.
That's beautifully put.
Sometimes it's the quiet courage, the strategic move, the influence you don't even see at first.
Yeah.
That can be the most powerful force for change.
And it brings us back to that core insight. God might seem silent in the story, but that doesn't mean absent. That hidden hand, working through people, through circumstances, through someone like Esther, it could be just as powerful, just as, miraculous maybe, as any big, obvious intervention. It invites us to look a bit deeper.
So here's something to take with you, something to maybe just mull over as you go about your day. For such a time as this moment, what quiet act of courage or conviction might be waiting for you?